With barely a glance, the Matra shook his head apologetically. "I'm sorry, madam, but there's no reservation under your name." Stunned momentarily, I couldn't believe it. "That's impossible," I stammered. "I was invited to dinner with my husband's family. They should already be here." Offering a polite yet firm smile, he informed me, "I just checked. There is a reservation for 6 under Morgan Sinclair." Suddenly, a sharp and familiar voice cut in, dripping with amusement. "Oh, Claire," Morgan's voice rang out. "Did you actually think I'd include you in tonight's dinner?" Turning, I saw my mother-in-law only a few feet away, dressed impeccably as always, her platinum hair styled perfectly. Behind her, my husband Adam sat stiffly, his eyes shifting uncomfortably between us, yet remaining silent. His sisters, Charlotte and Emma, whispered with smirks. Though my stomach twisted, I refused to let it show. "I don't understand," I stated calmly. Morgan smiled wider. "Oh, sweetheart, did you really come? I didn't think you would." She chuckled as if I had made some amusing mistake. "This is a family dinner, and a place like this? Well, it's a bit out of your league, don't you think? Maybe a budget restaurant is more your style." Charlotte giggled into her wine glass, while Emma avoided my gaze, and Adam sat saying nothing, fervently gripping his fork. The weight of humiliation settled over me, thick enough to choke on, and I could feel the judgments from other guests. I should have anticipated this. For years, Morgan had emphasized that I was never enough for her son. I wasn't from a wealthy background, didn't attend esteemed schools, and wasn't born into their elite world. From the moment Adam and I got engaged, Morgan made it clear I didn't belong. Initially, it was subtle, passive-aggressive remarks about my tastes, conveniently forgetting to invite me to family gatherings, lavish gifts for Adam while leaving me with nothing but empty smiles. Yet tonight, she took it further, arranging a sumptuous family dinner at an upscale restaurant and ensuring I was left at the doorstep like an intruder. It was all part of her plan, and she was savoring every moment. I should have felt devastated, but something clicked within me. Slowly, I smiled deliberately, noticing Morgan's brief falter, and without a word, asked the Matra, "Would you kindly request the owner to join us?" My voice was smooth and confident. Morgan laughed. "Do you think the owner will come just because you wish it?" I turned to her with unwavering eyes. "Yes, because he knows me quite well," I returned confidently. In moments, my mother-in-law was about to witness an unforgettable lesson. Though Morgan's smirk persisted, I detected a slight flicker of doubt in her eyes. For years, she treated me as an outsider. But tonight, she turned a petty game into a spectacle. The air was thick with anticipation as I held my ground, refusing to let her win. The Matra hesitated, unsure whether to entertain my request, but before he could speak, a deep voice intervened. "Claire." I turned as Daniel Leone, the owner of this prominent establishment, approached. In his early 50s, Daniel epitomized refined elegance with salt and pepper hair, a tailored suit, and the confident air of a man owning one of the city's finest restaurants. Morgan's eyes widened, recognizing the warmth in Daniel's gaze directed at me, not dismissal. "Daniel," I greeted, my smile broadening. "It's been a while." His glances shifted from Morgan to Adam and the sisters, then rested on me. "It has. What brings you here tonight?" Gesturing toward the family table, I noted, "It seems I was omitted from the reservation, a mere oversight." Daniel caught the nuanced subtext, his eyes darkening briefly, then smiled politely. "That won't do." Crossing her arms, Morgan scoffed. "Do you think a place like this accommodates just anyone with a whim for a table? It's private dining, after all." Unfazed, Daniel responded, "You're correct, Mrs. Sinclair. There are no spontaneous entries allowed." I felt a pang of disappointment, but before I could reply, Daniel addressed the maitre d'. "But Claire isn't spontaneous. She is family." The room fell silent. Charlotte almost spilled her drink. Emma's eyes darted in shock, and Adam tightened his grip on his silverware, but remained voiceless. Morgan, however, laughed disbelievingly. "Family? Surely this is a misunderstanding. Claire is actually my son's wife, and I can assure you that she has no connections. Daniel, however, has known me for quite some time. At this, Morgan's eyes narrowed.
How?
I leaned forward slightly, making sure my voice was just loud enough to carry to the nearby tables. Before marrying Adam, I worked in fine dining, I stated smoothly. Daniel here was my mentor. A stunned silence fell upon the table. Just as Morgan seemed about to object, Daniel interjected with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Claire isn't just any former employee, he said, his voice calm. She trained with me right after graduating from culinary school. I personally taught her everything about hospitality and high-end service, and she was one of the best students I've ever had. I observed Morgan's jaw clenching as realization dawned on her. All her efforts to belittle me were undermined by a past she was unaware of. Not one to back down, I turned to the maitre d', who stood awkwardly at his podium. I assume Daniel's word is good enough to secure me a seat? I inquired. The maitre d' quickly straightened up. Of course, Miss Claire, we'll prepare a table immediately. Morgan's face flushed to crimson I had never witnessed before. This is absurd, she hissed under her breath. Just because she worked for you, she gets special treatment? Daniel chuckled. No, she receives special treatment because she's earned it. Soon, a waiter was setting a place for me right beside Adam. Acting surprised, I mused. Seems there's plenty of room after all. Morgan's hands formed fists on the table. This is ridiculous. Leaning in, just enough for her to hear, I whispered, What's ridiculous is you thinking you could embarrass me without consequences. Her nostrils flared. You're being dramatic. I shrugged. I'm merely having dinner with my family. Wasn't that your intention? Before Morgan could retort, Daniel placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. I'll have the chef prepare something special for you, Claire. Morgan nearly choked. Something special? Daniel's smile broadened. On the house, of course. Morgan was visibly seething, but there was nothing she could do. Meanwhile, Adam remained silent, yet I noticed something in his expression, a mix of relief, shame, perhaps even embarrassment. Despite these uncertainties, I was certain that this dinner was just beginning, and Morgan would soon regret underestimating me. The waiter presented a beautifully polished silver plate with an elegant amuse-bouche, a gesture courtesy of Daniel. Morgan's expression reflected pure rage. Oh, I murmured, picking up my fork to savor the dish, not just in taste but in the tension-laden silence it fostered across the table. Charlotte and Emma exchanged wary glances, while Adam remained fixated on his glass, as though it held the answers to his problems. However, Morgan wasn't one to accept defeat easily. Sipping her wine deliberately, she set her glass down too forcefully. Well, I suppose it's only natural for someone in your circle to know people in the hospitality industry, she said, her smile taut. Hospitality? I questioned, raising a brow. With forced politeness, Morgan waved her hand dismissively. You know, jobs like waiting tables, working in kitchens, not exactly careers our family is accustomed to. There it was, the true purpose of her charade. It wasn't merely about keeping me out of a dinner. It was about reminding everyone of my humble beginnings. Taking another sip of wine, I replied, You say that as if it's a bad thing. Morgan appeared momentarily taken aback, perhaps annoyed or surprised, now that I wasn't rattled in the slightest. I only meant, she continued, her tone light yet patronizing, it must have been quite the adjustment marrying into a family like ours. Though the words dripped with condescension, Adam remained silent. I shifted my gaze toward Adam, noticing how he refused to meet my eyes, and the realization struck me. This wasn't merely about Morgan's cruelty, but his silence. Her taunts had occurred at our wedding when she excluded my family from the rehearsal dinner. At Christmas, gifting me a cookbook titled Simple Recipes for the Clueless Wife in front of everyone, and last summer, making a snide remark about how lucky I was that Adam took a chance on me. Each time, Adam let it pass, and I convinced myself it wasn't worth the conflict. But this time was different. This was not merely a passive-aggressive comment. It was a calculated public attempt to humiliate me, which he had allowed. I deliberately set down my wine glass, my movements slow and measured, as I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on the table. With a serene voice, I addressed Morgan from across the table. Do you understand the distinction between us? Despite herself, curiosity sparked in her eyes as she tilted her head. My smile widened. Everything I possess, I worked for, I declared, breaking the calm with a startling intensity. Morgan's demeanor grew defensive. What do you mean? She demanded, her voice hardening. Without flinching, I held her gaze. You know precisely what I mean, I replied, feeling Charlotte tense beside her. Emma pressed her lips as if stifling laughter. Mouth agape in disbelief, Morgan retorted. Are you suggesting I've never worked for what I have? I allowed the silence to stretch, challenging her poise. Before she could devise another dismissive comeback, I continued. I didn't marry into wealth or acquire my status through inheritance. My career was built from scratch, I added, gesturing around. Yet here we are, equal players at this prestigious eatery, respected by the owner alike. Morgan's fingers tightened around her napkin, knuckles turning white. No one laughed now, not even Charlotte or Emma, and Adam seemed ready to vanish under the table. For the first time, I perceived a shift in Morgan's expression. It wasn't anger, but a glimmer of fear. She had long comforted herself with the belief that I was beneath her, a mere gold digger clinging to her son. But now, she faced the stark truth. I was not someone she could undermine. Casually, I sliced into my dish. Oh, and Morgan, I murmured. Her sharp exhale betrayed her brewing fury. What? She snapped. Deliberately, I replied, be wary of whom you look down upon. Savoring my meal before adding, you never know who might rise above. The tension was palpable. Morgan, usually composed, sat rigid, her grip on her wine glass threatening to shatter it. Adam seemed mortified, wishing for invisibility, while Charlotte and Emma exchanged uncertain looks. For once, I felt sure of myself. I saw Morgan's superior facade crack, even if briefly. Unaccustomed to being challenged, she had built her influence on others' subservience and fear. But I no longer feared her. Collecting herself, Morgan placed her glass down with a soft clink. I see, she remarked, deceptively smooth. I should commend you, CLA. Despite your beginnings, you've elevated yourself. I sipped my wine quietly, offering no reaction. Curving her lips into a saccharine smile, she proceeded. Tell me, if you're so independent, why is my son funding your lifestyle? I paused. Charlotte gasped softly, Emma squirmed, and Adam flinched. Sensing the table's eyes on me, Morgan's smirk sharpened. Slowly, I set my glass down. What do you mean by that? I replied, fighting confusion. Leaning forward, Morgan whispered mockingly, isn't my son the reason you afford your charming boutique job? An illusion of a career. Her triumphant grin returned. Self-reliant, yet reliant on my son. There it was, her attempt to belittle me to irrelevance. The jab meant to reinstate my place beneath her. But rather than faltering, I laughed, genuine and unreserved. Morgan's smirk faltered. Find something amusing? She probed. Replacing my napkin on the table, still chuckling, I replied, you're so out of touch, Morgan. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? She asked. Turning to Adam deliberately, I said, you think he supports me? How endearing, raising a brow. Charlotte nearly choked, Emma gaped, and Adam paled. Morgan's expression froze in disbelief. What do you mean? I sighed, nearly sympathizing with her ignorance. You still see Adam as your little boy, rescuing me from insignificance. But let me reveal how our marriage operates, I confided, tilting my head. You want irony? Half of Adam's business ventures are backed by my finances. The revelations silenced the table. Morgan's world wobbled, her widened eyes reflecting the upheaval. What? She whispered, her disbelief palpable. My smile, devoid of warmth, addressed her. Adam did not forge his career unassisted. Shifting my gaze to my husband, I continued. Once, lacking capital for investing, he came to me. Picking up my wine, I signaled the undeniable fact. Our partnership built both our successes. Morgan's fingers twitched again on her glass, incredulous. That's not possible, she managed, disbelief heavy in her voice. I shrugged, unfazed. Believe what you wish, but the reality is unavoidable. Your son's achievements are rooted in my investments, my strategies, and my support, I countered. Seeking validation, Charlotte and Emma turned to Adam, who remained eerily silent, frozen in hesitation. Disappointment settled in as I shook my head knowingly. You think portraying me as some dependent homemaker diminishes me? That's laughable because Adam needs me far more than I need him. The truth stung, painting Morgan's face a deep crimson. Relaxed, I crossed my arms, confronting years of being made to feel out of place. I've been the backbone of this marriage, and the pillar for your esteemed family name, I asserted. Emma seemed on the brink of fainting, while Charlotte was left without words. Finally, Adam attempted to speak. Claire, he rasped, maybe we should, but I silenced him with a raised hand. No, Adam, I stated firmly. You don't get the privilege of, maybe we should, after your silence during your mother's attempts to shame me. An epiphany dawned on Morgan as she observed her son, the golden child, devoid of courage. Her pride in him visibly waned. For the first time, she saw him as lesser, beneath her expectations, a reversal almost delicious. Rising, I smoothed my dress, signaling my departure. I think I'm finished here, I declared. Morgan's nostrils flared, but I cut her off with a nod to Daniel, a polite observer. Daniel, it was lovely seeing you. Thank you for the hospitality, I expressed, prompting him to nod with amusement. Always a pleasure, Claire, he returned. With a final glance at Adam, I asked, Are you coming? He hesitated, torn between me and Morgan, confirming a painful truth. He had never chosen me, and he wasn't about to start. Morgan's triumphant smile met mine, for she didn't know I'd already decided, and soon she'd regret her ploys to subdue me. Adam stayed behind, as anticipated. The cool night air was unnoticed against my skin as I stepped out of the restaurant, clarity flooding my mind. This dinner, years in the making, had been a necessary jolt, urging me to act. Taking out my phone, my fingers moved decisively. We're moving forward. Begin the process first thing tomorrow. An immediate response from my attorney followed. Understood. Divorce settlement draft by noon. I exhaled, absorbing the reality. The term divorce no longer intimidated me. What terrified me was the lengthy denial of Adam's neglect. Alone in my marriage for years, tonight was the catalyst I needed. As I returned home before Adam, time allowed me to finalize plans. I accessed the home office safe. Adam never changed the passcode. Inside lay crucial financial documents, specifically a contract tying his success to my investment. A quick photo immortalized the evidence without needing removal. I then packed, serene in my choice. This was not an impetuous act, but a calculated departure. Adam's return found me in poised anticipation, suitcase at hand. Bewildered, he faltered in the doorway, unsure if this was still his home. Claire, he asked, confused. Took you long enough, I replied, motioning to the suitcase, my intentions clear. What are you doing? He stammered. You've made your choice, Adam, I said coolly. Back there, your silence was damning as she humiliated me once more. His jaw tightened. I was trying to keep the peace, he defended. I laughed derisively. Peace? Your mother orchestrated this dinner to belittle me, even omitted my name from the reservation intentionally, shaming me outright. As I advanced, Adam shrank back. And you let it happen, consistently? I accused, his guilt evident. It's complicated, Claire. You know her, he excused, rubbing his neck. No, Adam, I stated definitively. It's simple, you're weak. Claire glanced at Adam, offended by his words, yet they held a harsh truth. Throughout our entire marriage, you've allowed your mother to dictate your treatment of me, I said. I was patient, Adam. I've given you countless chances. But tonight it became clear. I saw you for who you truly are. Adam swallowed hard. Claire, let's just discuss this, he suggested. But that's the issue, Adam, I sighed. There's nothing left to discuss. I picked up my suitcase, walked past him, and as I reached the door, I heard him say, "I'll fight you on this." I turned around, intrigued. His face was dark with emotion, his voice lowered as he continued, "If you think you'll leave this marriage with half of everything, you're mistaken." I regarded him for a moment before smiling softly. "Oh, Adam, you should really review your contracts more carefully." Confusion flitted across his face. "What?" I interrupted him. "You wouldn't possess half of what you have without me. It was my money that was used to build your investments. And here's a surprise, I have all the paperwork to prove it." Adam's face lost its color as the realization set in, stepping back. He had thought he could intimidate me. He was clueless about who he was really dealing with. He stood frozen in the doorway, pale and tense. I observed as understanding dawned upon him. Not only was I leaving him, but I was taking everything he claimed to control. He opened his mouth to argue, to plead, perhaps to manipulate as he always had, but I didn't allow him the opportunity. "I'll be at the penthouse," I declared, adjusting my bag over my shoulder. His expression was puzzled. "Which penthouse?" I gave him a slight tilt of the head and smiled. "Oh, Adam, the one you believe you own." His confusion switched to horror. "The downtown penthouse?" he stammered. "The one I bought?" "Yes," I responded smoothly. "I had my lawyer inspect the ownership papers today. It was never truly yours, Adam." His nostrils flared in anger. "You wouldn't dare." "I already have," I told him, taking an envelope from my bag and tossing it onto the counter. After a moment's hesitation, he opened it, skimming over the contents with shaking hands. "This," he swallowed, "this claims you own 51% of my investment firm." I nodded. "Correct." Adam's breath became shallow as he protested. "That's impossible." I shrugged. "Not at all. I was the initial investor, remember? Ownership was never transferred to you. You merely assumed it was because you never actually read the contracts, did you?" Panic overtook his features as he desperately tried to comprehend how it had all unraveled. "Claire," he said, his voice tight, "you can't just take this from me." I smiled again. "I'm not taking anything. I already own it." He staggered back, gripping the counter. This was the man who let his mother degrade me, remaining silent as she attempted to strip away my dignity. Now he was the one lacking power. "I don't understand," he murmured.
"Why?"
"Why would you do this?" For the first time in years, I felt entirely and undeniably free. "Because Adam," I answered, "I finally see my worth." With that, I turned and left the house, never intending to return. A month later, in the luxurious penthouse, I sat with my legs crossed, savoring a glass of champagne. Across from me, my attorney smiled, sliding finalized divorce papers my way. "It's official. You're free," she declared. I exhaled, my fingers trailing over the thick paper.
Free.
The past few weeks had been intense. The legal battle was quick and fierce, with Adam trying to fight back. He burst into meetings, demanded better terms, and threatened legal action, but the proof of my majority ownership in his firm deflated his arrogance. Morgan attempted to intervene, furious and accusatory, calling me a gold-digging snake. I simply retorted, "If you raised him better, this wouldn't have happened," before blocking her number. Morgan Sinclair was no longer my concern. As I took a sip of the champagne, my phone buzzed. "Adam, can we talk?" I smirked, setting the glass down to type a response. "Me about what?"
Pause.
Then, "Adam, I don't know what to do." I sighed, shaking my head. It was genuinely sad. For years, I had waited for Adam to stand up for me, to defend me against his mother, to be the man I thought I had married. I waited for him to fight for me as I had for him. But now, the truth was evident. He had spent his life hidden behind the power of others, incapable of building anything independently. The irony was apparent. He needed me now more than ever, yet I no longer needed him. I typed one last message. "That's not my problem anymore." And just like that, I blocked his number too. For the first time, I was choosing myself, and it was the most empowering decision of my life.